Psalm 118, a verse that Peter quotes in one of his letters in the New Testament. And verse 22 says, "The stone which the builders refused has become the headstone of the corner. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes." How can we have hope in times of fear? We cannot live without hope. But how do we find it? This recent pandemic, the threat of future pandemics, cyclical economic recessions, political gridlock, waves of violence and protests, rampant crime, manipulative politicians, discredited institutions, lying media. Who do we believe? How can we move forward? Well, before we can move and look forward, we need to take a brief look back. In America, we have culturally embraced an expectation that each succeeding generation will have a better life than the previous one. This idea of life getting progressively better, each generation doing better, did not exist in ancient cultures. It sprang up with the birth and rise of Christianity because Christian hope spoke of a better day. Christian hope spoke of a God who is moving through history, who was going to bring about a renewal and a good end. And this view prevailed. It really took hold in the 1500s with the Reformation, and it prevailed till about 1750 with the Great Enlightenment, which followed the Reformation. The Enlightenment secularized Christian hope, embracing the idea of continued upward progress, but a progress that was based on science and reason. God was no longer considered necessary. And this view prevailed until about 1900. For the last 120 years, this view has taken a beating from 2 world wars, Spanish flu, and the Great Depression. Since the early 1960s, and reaching full bloom in this century, is postmodernism. Postmodernism essentially tears down the old societal structures. You know, we heard it especially during the summer of 2020. Everyone was saying, not everyone, but a lot of people were saying, let's just burn it all down. But it offers nothing in its place. It's a cheeky arrogance that might makes right, and that those in power, the elite, know what's best for the rest of us, and if we just step aside and get out of the way, they would form a fair and just society for all. 2 of the past 5 presidents have confidently claimed that they are on the right side of history. We don't need a divine being. We just need to change people's circumstances with such things as guaranteed basic income, universal health care, free education. And if we would just do that, good people would make good decisions and society will be fair and just for everybody. But there are 2 insurmountable, unsolvable problems with this view. The first of these is the problem of human nature. Karl Marx and his disciples believe that we are the product of social forces. Criminals act as they do because they've been disenfranchised by systemic injustice. Humans by nature are good, and if we just provided the right opportunities, they would make the right choices all the time. Really? If that's true, then why do we have to teach our children not to lie, not to steal, not to be selfish, not to lose their temper, not to make fun of other people? Do I need to go on? The virtues that make for a successful life, that make for a successful society, have to be taught, and they have to be cultivated. We don't come by these things naturally. In fact, we are born with a bent towards self-centeredness coupled with a great capacity for cruelty. In addressing the Holocaust following World War II, Lord David Cecil said, and I have no idea if he was a Bible believer or not, but he got this right. He said, the jargon of the philosophy of progress taught us to think that the savage and primitive state of man is behind us. But barbarism is not behind us. It is within us. And we see the evidence of this in the grasping of power-drunk politicians, greed-fueled corporate boardrooms, and a tsunami of crime that renders our cities into uninhabitable war zones. The second problem that progressives cannot overcome is the view of the future, because they have none. To them, there is nothing beyond this material world. The ultimate destiny of human civilization is oblivion. In the movie Annie Hall, there's a 9-year-old character by the name of Alvy Singer who has been taught this in school, and he realizes that since civilization will be destroyed, he decides there's no reason to do his homework. Now, it's designed to make people laugh in the audience, and they do, but it's truly not funny. Because if there is no God to whom I must give an account, if there is no heaven to gain, if there is no hell to shun, why not live as a beast and just act on my impulses? If this is all there is, if this is all we'll ever be, I better grab all the gusto while I can. It is no wonder that mental illness, suicide, alcoholism, drug and gambling addictions, all kinds of crime are endemic in our society today. For the last 60 years, we have sown the wind of atheism, and we are reaping the whirlwind of a decaying, problem-plagued society. C.S. Lewis has rightly argued that no one can functionally live with the belief that all we are is matter and that when we die, there's nothing else. But there is hope. There is hope. There is a God who is guiding human history not just to an end, but to a new beginning, where death and evil are destroyed, and where justice and peace prevail and reign. Because of the resurrection, the stone that the builders rejected, the way that God presented to the world that they cast aside, God took that and made it a foundation for a basis of hope, a foundation upon which we can build our lives, a foundation upon which we can rebuild our society. And there are 3 words which I would like to use to describe this hope that you and I have today. The first word is reasonable. Christian hope is reasonable. The historical evidence of Jesus' resurrection is abundant. In fact, there is more evidence substantiating Christ's resurrection than there is for many events that have occurred in what we call modern history, and more than any event that occurred in ancient history. It is evidence that demands an explanation. It is evidence that no intellectually honest person can ignore. The Bible is not a history book, but it records events that occurred in the lives of people who actually lived. The Bible is not a science book, but where the Bible and science intersect, Scripture is affirmed. In the tens of thousands of archaeological finds, the Bible has never been refuted. Yes, it requires faith in Jesus and his resurrection in order to be saved. But this faith is not a blind leap in the dark. God himself says to us, "Come, let us reason together," says the Lord. There is more than enough evidence for you and I to rationally and reasonably conclude that the one who has made and controlled the universe is the one who will one day renew it and banish evil forever. Christian hope is reasonable. Second of all, it is substantial. Most world religions offer people some sort of hope for some type of life after death. They teach that the body in this physical world will pass away, but we will continue on in some spiritual form of existence in the cosmos. The so-called progressive culture is the first in human history that offers no hope as individuals. As individuals and as a civilization, it all goes to nothing. It's oblivion. There's no soul. There's no supernatural. Science is God, and there's only the here and now. Christianity differs from both of these. Jesus' resurrection was the first fruits and the down payment. In other words, Jesus' resurrection was the sign, the example of what awaits us. And it was also the guarantee that one day he will return and these bodies will be raised from the dead. We will have genuine physical bodies to house our souls. Our bodies won't have defects. I won't wear bifocals. I won't wear a brace. I won't be diabetic. We won't suffer any of the aches and pains, the handicaps or limitations that we currently experience. Death does not annihilate our humanity. Because of the resurrection, it perfects it. Amen. We will be able to see, to communicate, to touch and be touched, to eat and drink and breathe. Our humanity will be perfect. Death and evil and all of their effects will be banished. And the world in which we live will be fully renewed, characterized by perfect prosperity, justice, love, and peace. And more than that, the resurrection, because of the resurrection, when we cross over into eternity, that life will not just be a consolation for the things that we have lost. It will be a restoration of all the things that we lost. No other faith in this world promises this. Thank God there is something real to which we can look. Then finally, this hope that we have, it's realistic. The philosophy of George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel has dominated Western thinking for nearly 2 centuries. He is the one who took the ideas of the Enlightenment and taught that in each age, conflicting forces come together and they synthesize, and the result of this synthesis is that it pushes our experience upward and forward. Thus, we can expect each generation having a better life than the one before it. But in the real world, that's not how life works. We may want our kids to have a better life than us. We may want our grandchildren to have a better life than our children, but that is not something that's inevitable. Jesus, in bringing about his kingdom, does not synthesize. He does not merge holiness with sin. He doesn't mix life with death to make something a little bit better. And life doesn't go linear where it's just always on an upward trend. What Jesus did was actually V-shaped. He came down. He descended through his incarnation, his humiliation, and his death, But then he ascended with his resurrection. And rather than synthesize, what he has done is he has defeated sin. He has defeated death. And between now and his second coming, it's going to be a bumpy and uneven ride. But it is through hardship that you and I grow. It is through hardship that we learn about the truth about ourselves. And it is through hardship that we become what we are created to become. Jesus said, in this world, you shall have tribulation. But be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. For you and I, hope is not a verb. It's a noun. Hope is not something that we do. Hope is something that we have. It is confidence. It is certainty. It is full assurance. With all the trouble that swirls around us, we do not have to anxiously sort it all out or keep it all under control, because God has already sorted it out, and he already has it under control. I can't remember who wrote this. I don't remember if it's C.S. Lewis or Tim Keller, but one of them wrote this. Right now, we are temporarily trapped in a little corner of darkness. But God's universe is an enormous place of light and beauty. And that is our final destination. And Jesus has secured this for us through his death and resurrection. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. What the world has thrown away, God has taken and made it into the foundation upon which we can build our lives. We need not live in anxiety or fear because of the eternal hope that we have through the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So let us lift up our eyes and look to him. Let's stand.